Welcome to Being Human. This week's guest is Henry Stewart, CHO of Happy and author of the Happy Manifesto. I came across you because you wrote the foreword to the book Super Engaged, written by Nikki Gattenby, who was a guest a couple of episodes back, fabulous guest. So that was the connection. Bought your book, and now really happy to have this opportunity to sit down with you and delve into some of the ideas in the book and perhaps some of the practices you use to run Happy as the Chief Happiness Officer.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm delighted to be on Being Human.
Great. And we're actually here in your offices. And I have to say, arriving at reception was something, right? The colours, the just the sense of vibrancy. As soon as you walk in the building, and you do IT training, and most people don't associate that with kind of, creativity or vibrancy or creativity. And yet we've got this, fabulous environments that you've created here. So,
we fundamentally believe people learn best when they're happy, as they do most things best. So whether it's IT training that we do or whether it's the management development that we do, give them a vibrant, colourful environment and everything will go better.
Right. Okay. And so you didn't start with this as a philosophy, though, am I right? You sort of grew into this. So can we go back to when you first founded the company and how you sort of evolved into this?
Yeah, I set up Happy at the end of 1987 as Happy Computers, which is about helping people enjoy learning about computers. But there was always a motive. There's always a desire to create a company that was a great place to work, that was principled, and that gave great service. And that was because I'd worked for a truly awful company before, and that's been that whole impetus for Happy.
Okay, so you wanted to create this happy environment.
Yeah.
And what did that start with? So you created this environment for people learning with computers. What were the first steps you took in order to build the culture that now exists today?
Initially, there was just me, so there wasn't a lot of it going on. But the key turning point was in 1992 when I read Maverick by Ricardo Semler. And at that point, we had 3 members of staff. And that was a typical stressed small businessman ringing back every day from holiday to check everything was going okay. And then I read Maverick, and that gave a completely different picture of how Ricardo Semler describes how he turned the business he inherited from his father, from one where workers were searched on the gate every day, to one where they were completely trusted to set their targets, organise the work, even set their own salaries in many cases. And it blew my mind. And ever since then, every member of staff at Happy has received a copy of Maverick when they join. And certainly in the early days, that was our Bible for creating an environment where people were trusted.
Right. And so were there examples could you see then before reading that book and after where you weren't trusting your employees and then you started trusting them? What were the initial experiences with you, I guess, experimenting with trusting people differently?
Yeah. I talked about a moment ago, phoning back from holiday. A year after reading Maverick, I was away for 3 weeks with pneumonia, and I came back and there was just 2 phone calls to make. Everything else had been dealt with, sales had gone up, and everything was running smoothly because everything had shifted. And there's one particular woman I remember who changed in the middle of her development. She changed from being not really very good at all to actually performing well. And when I asked her why, she said, "You started believing in me." And that was true. And there was a particular point where I thought, I'd just read Maverick. I thought, right, let's see if this works. And it made a complete difference to her performance.
Right. And what did it take for you to start believing in her then?
Just really the philosophy. The philosophy at Happy now is believe the best. We believe everybody is doing the very best they can, given their past experiences and what they bring to the moment. Everybody is doing the very best they can, and start from that assumption, and you'll find most people are. If you start from the base of trust rather than starting from the basis that let's see if I can trust them, There's that difference. So
that's
I
the
always
shift.
start from the basis that people are trustworthy.
Right. So the shift is you don't wait for them to prove themselves.
Exactly.
You start, I trust you.
Yeah. And that will generally,
go from there.
because that will generally create the result you want. It will create the trust. It's like this. I think I remember somebody saying, Branson says, you shouldn't set the rules for the 2% who are going to do things wrong. You should set it for the 98% who come want you to do a fantastic job every day. And that's the principle. Okay.
And I'm sure there are going to be people listening to this and they're asking, okay, so what happens when that goes wrong? So in the 2% of cases where you trust and then it doesn't work out, how do you deal with that within
Well, you still believe the best of them. You try and work out what is it that caused that. You try and work out, are they not doing what they're good at? Did we recruit the wrong person? Are we not supporting them well enough? There are times when somebody is simply in the wrong job or not right for you, and you have to part company. But but even then, it's a basis of making them feel good, making them leave well. So not just, Richard Sheridan describes how somebody left his company, Menlo, and wanted to come back. And when they told their new employer they wanted to come back, the security guard went to their desk and they were escorted out with their box of stuff. And that is the opposite of what he would want and what I would want. If somebody has to go, it's about making it good for them when they go.
Right. And interestingly, in the book, you cite McKinsey as a good example of this. Now, most people would think of McKinsey as these hard-hearted, capitalists, and yet you're saying you actually cite the way that they deal with their leavers as being...
Absolutely, but it's about self-interest, because if at McKinsey you're not going to make partner, and it's tough to make partner, they will come to you and they'll say, okay, you're not going to make partner, you've got 6 months to find someone somewhere else, and we'll help you find somewhere. And the result of that is throughout the city, there are ex-McKinsey people who think McKinsey are great because they help them find these fantastic jobs. Is that in the interest of McKinsey? Of course it is. I don't want people out there who've, apart from the fact, I don't want them to feel bad generally, but I don't want them going out there thinking Happy's an awful place. I want them to be out there telling people Happy's great.
Right. And feeling good about Happy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you talk about as well in the book, this idea that people perform at their best when they feel good about themselves.
Absolutely.
And so what are the things that you can do as a manager or a leader to bring that about in people?
Okay. So what people don't like is being micromanaged, told what to do, blame cultures, right? I think we can all agree that. What they do like is, first of all, doing something they're good at. Secondly, having the freedom and trust to do it well. Then having a manager who coaches rather than tells, and to be valued and listened to. This it isn't really that hard. So what helps people feel good about themselves is being trusted and being given that level of freedom. So as a manager, so there's a couple of things there. One is, since the book, what we now try and do is ensure everybody finds joy in their work 80% of the time. And at their quarterly check-in, we actually get them to assess what percentage of my work time do I find joy in my work.
Wow, 80, and that's pretty extraordinary as a target. And how often do people hit
They're getting there. Simona came to me the other day and said, I'm at 90%. And it's a matter of, doing what you're good at. This deeply radical idea that you should get people to do what they're good at. It'd never work, would it? Because that's what you enjoy doing. And then not having to get approval, not having a manager on your back, but just having the authority to do it yourself.
Right.
So that's a key element of finding joy at work. And the other key element is going into a lot of organisations, what I find is that the problem is normally at the top, right? It's not the frontline staff, it's at the top, again and again. And it came to a point I ultimately had to think, is that maybe true of Happy as well? So one of the things I've done over the last 18 months is I've consciously sought to get out of the way, to not make decisions, right? I think probably know the David Marquette story, the submarine commander who made no decisions and turned the submarine into the best performing submarine in US Navy history. Well, I thought, okay, what happens if I don't make decisions? So we've had various decisions happen. We've had a completely new IT system. I wasn't involved in the decision. We've had the pricing changed. I wasn't involved in that. We've had all sorts of things like that. And as a result of me stepping out in the way and not being involved in decisions, sales have gone up 26%. And we've gone from a loss to £165,000 profit in 1 year. And there's various elements to that, but one of the key elements is getting out of the way.
Right. Right. And you mentioned in the book, don't you, there's an example of a guy running a chemical plant who saw that his productivity went up over the weekend when he wasn't around.
That's right. Exactly.
And this idea that less management.
Yeah. Because he was being very helpful. He was saying, maybe I can help with this or that, and just getting in the way. Actually, if people are doing what they're good at and know what they're doing and have the feedback from, say, the client and people like that, it's no good giving people complete freedom and never letting them know what the client thinks of what they're doing. But if you have freedom, you're doing what you're good at, and you get the feedback, then just, leave you to it.
Right.
With support. Right. Most people don't like to be on their own. Some companies have got rid of managers. We don't have anyone, we don't use the title manager, but we have what we're called coordinators. But basically their role is to coach. So most people will meet their coordinator once a fortnight or once a month to get that support, to have a coaching session.
And the point you make in the book is that that's on demand by them, right?
Yeah.
It's for them to pull that support when they feel they need it.
Yeah. So one of the things we believe here is that you should be able to choose your manager. Okay. Just on that note, I'm not normally chosen. I don't, at the moment, I don't manage anybody, which is great.
Wow.
But there's one guy who said, I want you to manage me, Henry. And I thought, oh, okay. And so what I worked out was he didn't actually want to meet his coach every fortnight or every month. And he realised if he chose me, I'd never get around to it. And it worked very well.
That's extraordinary. You're I know you're not the CEO, but you have.
I'm effectively run the company.
You have the highest degree of positional power in the company, and you don't manage anybody.
Yeah, and I would give that advice to any entrepreneur out there, right? I was at one meeting of small business folk. I think it's in the book, where somebody said, people, they kept suing me, taking me to tribunals. It got so bad, I had to hire somebody just to be nice to people. And that was probably the best business decision he made, because he was great at going out there, doing the selling, doing the networking, but he was no good, like many entrepreneurs, at sitting back and establishing that personal relationship and developing it over time and coaching people. And yes, I've got somebody to be nice to people. I'd like to think I'm nice too, but I'm not on that. It doesn't play to my strengths to do that one-to-one managing.
Right, and you talk about that in the book you use yourself as an example of playing to your strengths, how you recognise that you weren't particularly good at the fostering of long-term relationships. Yeah. You're quite good at the networking and introducing yourself to strangers, which I hate, actually. So right. I thought that was interesting, really. But you're not so good at the long term, so you have other people follow up on the... Exactly.
Get people to do what they're good at. I mean, I think the example you've referred to is going to exhibitions. And I love talking to people and meeting strangers, and it's completely superficial, and that's great. And then I bring all the forms back. And what used to happen was they would sit on my desk for weeks, and I'd try and come up with a system to deal with it or force myself to do it, but I was no good at that. But some of the people who would hate going to the exhibitions would be fine at that. And this is key. Let's say I wasn't the boss. Let's say it was in my job description. My job was to do exhibitions and follow up. And the manager would say, yeah, it's no good, Henry, you not following up, because it's in your job description. That's what you got to do. And that's how it works, many companies. But it's a bit like saying to people, because we're fixed on job descriptions, you have to do, it's kind of, what's the phrase? People often say, look, you have to do some things that you don't enjoy, that you're not good at. It's right. But what that's like saying is you have to do some things which make my company less productive. And that doesn't make sense. It makes far more sense to sit around the office and say, who wants to do this? Who would like to do this? Who would it give joy to? And that's what often happens in the office. We don't delegate to individuals here. Because I don't know that Lydia or Simona or Susie, who I might have an idea whose strength it plays to, but actually give it to the team and let them decide who should do that, which will partly depend on their strengths, partly depend on who's got time, partly depend on all sorts of things. But too many managers, as you probably know, always delegate to the same person.
Right, the super performer, the star that over,
Or the person, their favourite.
Or their favourite, right.
Yeah.
So I can hear that people listening to it think, I'll just give it to the team. And what happens if it's an unpleasant, and just no one takes it, and then things fall through the gaps? Do you ever find that happens? Is that a downside of operating this way?
No. Why would that happen?
It might just be that this particular task or activity is not appealing to anybody, and so it just doesn't.
But they're a team, and they will decide between themselves. This work needs to be done. Who can do it? It's about these people have responsibility and accountability.
So it gets done.
Yeah, it gets done.
And you still find that. So of that 80% of people found joy, how many people here are hitting that? What's your joy level, your joyometer reading right now?
Well, that's an interesting question. We're just doing the check-ins this month, and I think that's the first time we've put it in the check-ins. So I'll be able to tell you in a couple of weeks. But the sense I get, I know Kathy's at 95%. She's told me that. Because it's a matter of, if it doesn't give you joy, can you either find somebody else who it does give joy to, or can you find a different way of doing it? Like, we used to have a management report, which was called the SODIT report. Like, it was strengths, opportunities, something else. And it felt like a SODIT report, and none of us enjoyed doing it. It was all facts and figures and all sorts of things. So we sat around and we decided, can we make this more fun? So we now have the joyful report. I can't even remember which is similar set of acronyms, and we put in stuff about people as well as the facts, and we all still get together every month to review these, but we've made it a more fun activity.
Okay. So
think of every meeting you go to, particularly if you call the meetings yourselves. They don't need to be boring. You can decide to make them joyful events.
Right. Yeah, and so as what I'm listening to here, because I was with a different client yesterday, and there's a real sense of a compliance culture. So there's people listen, I have to do this, I have to create this report, we're asked to do, we have to do. So it sounds like you've broken that tendency in companies for people to kind of hunker down and just suck up certain elements of their job.
Yeah. Why should you? A lot of this stuff is pointless. Somebody was telling me how they used to do a report which took up a third of their time. And they gradually began to wonder, does anybody read this? And so they started putting silly things on page 2 and page 3. And they discovered nobody read this report, which they spent a third of their time doing. How much of the work that people do is actually completely pointless?
I'm sure a lot, but then it's this, how do people... But people then feel like, they feel unable to find a way to not have to do that. And I think it sounds to me like one of the ways that you've broken that is by there's no hard delegation to somebody.
Yeah.
So there's nobody who has to comply in order to please.
Absolutely. So if I try to delegate something to the team, sometimes they'll say, "Does this really have to be done, Henry?" And sometimes they know something they don't know. So I can say, yes, this is why, da-da-da-da. And sometimes I'll say, well, actually, maybe not. So there's active questioning of it all.
But that's interesting. So the fact that they will ask you that wouldn't exist in some companies. The people wouldn't come to you and say, Henry, does this really need to be done?
Yeah.
So there's something else here about people feeling like they can challenge people that they perceive to be in authority.
Absolutely. And, the core philosophy at Happy is celebrate mistakes. So there's a whole thing about, it's a no-blame culture. Yet you can challenge authority. You can get stuff wrong if and we'll celebrate it.
You can challenge authority. So those are two distinct ideas. You can challenge authority and you can get things wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. They are two distinct things. Yeah. But yeah. And why would you not want people to challenge authority? It's like Google's Hippo thing.
They're the highest paid person.
Yeah. Beware hippos. There's a big post at many Google sites, which is beware the highest paid opinions view. Because if you just go with the highest paid opinion, you'll often get it wrong.
Right.
I'll give you
Right.
I'll give you an example of that, which is since the book. Which one of our clients is GCHQ, right? The British Intelligence Services. They really they've got their own copy of the book.
Okay.
And the direct. Let me just think. They need to be at the forefront of innovation, right? Because they need to be up with the technology. So some of my colleagues there got £1 million budget from their directors for innovation. And they set up a great crowdfunding site, 'cause they're all geeks, where you could say, I want £500 for this, or £10,000 for that, or £500 for this. There are a whole bunch of ideas on there. Who would normally then decide who got the money in most companies?
Yeah, the most senior person.
Yeah. So what they did was they divided the £1 million into 100 sets of £10,000 and gave it to the most junior people in the organisation. Literally, to get a £10,000 slot, they needed to have never managed anybody and never managed a budget. And they then decided who got the money. So I had somebody I know there who said he had a £10,000 idea for a new piece of technology which would improve communication. In the past, it would have needed 5 levels of approval, and he probably wouldn't have bothered.
Right.
So they put it on one shot, the name of the technology. It got funding within a week, was implemented within 2 weeks. So you had 2 things going on there. First, fast increase the speed of decision making and change. And secondly, completely changed who made those decisions. Because actually, in most organisations, the people who know what's going on aren't the directors at the top.
Right.
They're the frontline staff.
Right.
And in that case, who's going to know the technology best? The geeks who are just out of university or the people who've been there 40 years?
Right.
So take the decision making away from people like me and put it at the front line.
But did you have to go through some kind of... Did you have to give something up to allow yourself to let go of that? Right. Because I can hear people thinking that's great intellectually, but emotionally, isn't that going to take something from people to let go of?
Yeah. People.
That.
Yes, people will say all sorts of things like, "Well, what's my job then?"
Right.
Okay. Now I find my role is actually starting new stuff up. Right. That's what I give speeches, I network and start stuff up. So at the moment we're starting management apprenticeships, and I've now built that up to probably a quarter of the company, and so I'm now going to hand it over. So somebody else does that, because what I'm good at is starting stuff. Yeah. So it doesn't mean you don't get to do anything. It means you get to play. You get to do interesting stuff. You get to do what plays to your strengths.
Right. And I think that's important for people to hear, that there's something on the other side of giving up a lot of what people might feel makes them valuable in a company, as it's certainly at a senior level. Yeah.
But and it means I get a really, chilled life.
Like today, after this interview, you told me you've got nothing in your diary.
I've got nothing in my diary after today. It's. Have you seen that video of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett?
Yes, right. With Charlie.
Yeah, busy is the new stupid. Whereas Bill Gates used to think he had to pack every moment of his day. That's what being, chief executive meant. And Warren Buffett has virtually nothing in his diary. All right, I'm not a billionaire like that, and most of people haven't got that level of ability to get. But yeah, I generally, if you want a meeting with me, I can normally have it in the next couple of days.
Yeah,
if it's important.
Yeah, exactly. That was the case with this interview. A couple of emails and a week later, exactly in the diary. Yeah, which is extraordinary. So that's giving up, and that part of that is you giving up a need to make decisions.
Absolutely. I have one meeting a month here. One group meeting. I have one day basically where I have one-to-ones with the heads of department and a meeting with them all, which is called the strategy meeting. And apart from that, I have no structured meetings at all. I also meet clients. Sometimes they have one-to-ones occasionally, and I wander around and check in with people. But yeah. So I'd ask you people, if you've got more meetings than that, why?
Right.
I think organisations with a lot of meetings are a sign of a lack of trust. Right? Because if people have trust and authority to decide in their own area, this is key. Let's take pricing, right? So pricing on the IT training side is John's responsibility. He can ask lots of people for advice, he can talk to people, but he takes the decision, right? So it doesn't need 3 meetings to decide we're going to raise the prices. It needs John to decide. When he decided a price change last month, I wasn't even consulted. Yeah? And if in the old days, if I had been, I'd probably say, oh, John, no, I'm not sure about that. But, hey, leave him. He can work it out. If it doesn't work, something else he'll work that out. So what is it with your meetings, I would say to everyone watching this? Why do you need them? Now, yes, some meetings are great to have a brainstorm. Agile has stand-up meetings where you get up and say what I'm doing today. But those turgid meetings, do they have any function at all?
Yeah, it's permission giving often.
Yeah.
It's permission giving is the function.
Yeah.
And it gives people the sense that they're going to be okay to proceed.
Yeah.
And they've consulted the right people.
Okay. So if you have a meeting which makes a bunch of decisions, then why haven't you given other people the authority to make those decisions? Why do they need to come to the meeting? Why don't they have... It's similar to holacracy, but not with all the processes. So you just try and make sure everyone has authority over something.
And for those who don't know, holacracy is a system for very clearly defining who has accountability.
Absolutely. And that principle of it is brilliant. Everyone should have accountability for something.
Yeah. But you've done that in a way that's less formalised, I suppose, right? It's more bled into the culture.
Yeah, and Brian Robertson, who invented it, might say, he does say, actually, you can't do one bit of it, you've got to do it all. But I say, yeah, that's a really good bit of it. Okay.
Right. Now, the other thing in the book which I liked was you mentioned some research by McLeod in 2009 that suggested that engagement leads performance. So some of the critique of this way of operating is that is it really a contributor to financial performance, let's say, or is it just an attribute of existing financial performance? So that is to say, is it just the companies that are already doing financially well that breed happiness in their staff versus it's actually the happiness that drives the performance? And he cited several longitudinal studies where they found that no, it's this style of engagement that precedes the...
Absolutely. The idea that it's in the performance that leads to engagement is nonsense. There's no research basis for it. Whereas what McLeod quotes is work by the Gallup guy, I've forgotten his name. What McLeod quotes is work by the Gallup guy that says there's a 4 times as bigger connection between engagement leading to performance as the other way around. And there's a guy called Alex Edmonds, who was at Wharton Business School, now at London Business School, who researched the Great Places to Work list. And found that over 25 years, if you had invested in the Great Place to Work that on the stock market, as opposed to the standard stock market, instead of, say, getting £100,000 at the end of it, you'd have ended up with 236,000. That's the hard financial difference. And he's looked at the way it works, that it is that direction. It is great workplaces lead to performance. Now, you might say that people who just are great leaders that know how to make a company succeed, that's one part of it, that they create a great workplace. But I'm happy with that as a theory. It may be they're doing all sorts of other things, but those who are great at performance make sure that's one part of it. And that it may be the other things help as well. But those great leaders know the importance of a happy workplace, of a great workplace. And there's a great... Well, you might ask, why then don't investment funds invest in happy workplaces?
Right.
And I did find one fund that does, the Panussus Endowment Fund, set up about 13 years ago to invest specifically in happy workplaces. They were $600,000 originally, they're now $1.4 billion. And then the top 1% of performing funds across the entire United States on that basis. And Alex Edmonds, the guy who did this research, says he invests all his savings in the Panussus fund.
Right, okay. Because I had heard something on the Good to Great that suggested that actually if you took a longer span, and a recent update to that research suggested that actually they weren't as as good as that initial research suggested.
No, the good to great companies, there is some, and just as in the Search for Excellence ones, there's some of those companies haven't done so well. But what Alex was looking at was the companies that performed well in the Fortune list. And he was looking at it, he was reinvesting each year. So if a company dropped out of the list, then yes, he took the investment out, because that would be a sign that they may be going wrong. So he invested purely in the companies that were in the list.
Okay. And then there's other researchers investing in happy workplaces. That's suggests that that's an effective strategy.
It does rather, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something intuitive to me that suggests that if you look at happy families, and I don't know, this might be a bit reductive, but tend to produce healthier, more productive offspring, right? Generally.
Yeah.
And so if you were to go through, 20 families in a town, and you rank them by happiness and predicted the life outcomes of the offspring of those children, you'd expect a pretty good correlation, right, between the happiness of the family and the...
Absolutely. And think of where you'd like to work. Would you like to work somewhere where you know you can get joy at work at least 80% of the time? Or do you want to work somewhere where you'll be micromanaged and hate your manager and all this kind of thing? There's research which shows that the worst time of day for individuals is their time with their boss. Yeah? Obviously best is with your friends, then there's family, and it goes, worse than being alone is time with your boss.
Worse than being alone.
And if you ask people, let's say you get into work and there's a note from your boss saying, I'd like to see you at 2:00. Do you feel excited? People don't, do they?
No,
they don't.
Anxious.
But what you need is, what helps you, but also helps the company, is to have not a boss, but a coach who's there to support and motivate and inspire you and to help you find your own solutions. So this is what I say to managers. Let's say somebody comes up to you in the corridor even, never mind a one-to-one, and says, I've got a problem, can you help me? You've got two options. Do you tell them what to do, or do you ask them questions? Right? What are the assumptions if you tell them what to do? Well, you're assuming that you know best, that they don't know the answer and aren't capable of working it out, that they're not as clever as you, effectively. Whereas if you ask them questions, you're assuming they're capable of finding out the solution. They're intelligent. They know the situation better. And that's the difference. The telling them is quicker in the short term, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But what's quicker in the long term is asking those questions. So one of the challenges I give to managers, and I encourage your viewers to do this, is it comes from Multipliers, a book by Liz Wiseman, is ask at your next meeting, particularly one that you've called, and your next one-to-one, ask only questions. Just see how it works. Ask only questions. That's one of the challenges I give. The other challenge I give is coming back to making no decisions. Could you decide to make no decisions for 3 months? So I've got a colleague who did this at a major retail store. I took very hierarchical. Normally, people, somebody got a complaint saying, I've got to take that to the manager. Oh, the manager's not in. We can't deal with it. That kind of environment. And so they moved to a situation where the manager in 2 of the stores made no decisions. Instead, they coached their people to make decisions. They improved every KPI over that 3-month period. And I've seen the video of the people saying how much suddenly they enjoy coming to work. They can take decisions. They don't have to, just bow to the manager. And the manager's wives talking about how, hey, he's so much more relaxed. He doesn't ring back to work every day. So that is, if you're, particularly if you're a chief exec, but if you're a director or anything, what would it be like to make no decisions for 3 months? Just 3 months to start with. Wow. See how it goes.
And you mentioning the wives reminds me of back to the Maverick book by Ricardo Semler, and he talks about what a massive impact it had out in the families of the people who work for him, right? And domestic abuse went down, you know, all these wives are coming to him, thanking him for the change in their husbands.
Yeah. And the other way around, their husbands as well, hopefully, if the ones that are, but in these two cases, they were two men. So yes, which comes down to one of the basic fallacies of management. Most people think they become a manager because they're the expert. They know best. They need to make the decisions, right? And so they end up, you know, making, feeling they have to make those decisions. And that's not the role. The role isn't to show how clever you are, it's to show how clever your people are. Yeah? So your role is to get the most out of your people, to help them find their solutions, to coach them to be their best, and to get out of the way so they can do that.
Right. What if you're a super genius? What if you're Elon Musk? And you really are the smartest guy in the room. Let's just say the myth's accurate. And you really do know better. Isn't it a sort of derogation of responsibility to not take the decision? To not?
Well, this whole concept of you really do know better. Now, okay, I don't know Elon Musk that well, but I know he runs several companies. So I doubt he can be that hands-on in any of them, actually. And his role, I would say, is to inspire.
Yeah.
And is to drive people forward. Yeah, that is a leadership role, you know, to believe the impossible and to set up an environment where you believe the impossible. Does he know best? Judging from some of his tweets and his things, I'm not sure he does. And will he know best in the particular issues and particular details? No, I hope, I don't know, that he leaves a lot of the detail to other people.
Yeah. No, I mean, of course he does. It's just interesting to explore the edge cases where it may be that you do know, you simply are the best informed person in the room.
Yeah, there may be some, but you know, I don't feel I am in most cases. So there you go. I used to think I was. I used to think I've got smarts. You know, but no.
But I can see the value of doing that. So, let's say a 3-month experiment, because you would then that would shake out, right, all of the cases where nothing bad happened, right, and then you would see in reflection, or maybe there was one or two that I could have taken.
Coming back to David Marquette, the submarine commander, there was one decision he kept to himself, which was the decision to launch the missiles. That was his responsibility. So what we say to people is, what would it be like to make no decisions, and what would be your exception?
Yeah.
You know, and the exception is probably something that would actually severely damage the company. But, you know, most... I haven't felt the need to step in there because nothing's going to serious. People take responsibility.
There's no missile equivalent in Happy. You retain the right to make.
No, I retain that right if something is going to severely damage the company, but I've not needed to make that.
So that would be the one case where you would you exercise it.
But we come back to values. If somebody's saying, what do I do with this customer? It's okay. Key value is delight the customer. What my question back would be, what would delight that customer? You know, if we have key values, people won't stray onto, you know, I don't know, do some of the nasty things that happen in some companies.
Right. So interesting, isn't it, that those seem to link then, this idea of asking questions and what are our values.
Yeah.
So you're going to ask questions like, what would delight the question?
What would believe the best is a very common one, because, you know, you have a frustrating discussion with either a customer or a colleague or someone, and the question, you're fuming, and so my question would be, what would it be to believe the best of them? To believe they were coming from the best angle, they were coming with their experience, you know. It can be frustrating for somebody to be asked that question, but yeah, so it's coming back to these values.
I can imagine it's really frustrating when you're fuming.
And they might need somewhere to vent first, you know, yeah. They might need a one-on-one vent first, and then, you know, think about believing the best.
And what would give you joy?
Yeah, what would give you joy?
Of the team here, who would get the most joy from doing this task? So so they seem to be important pillars. The values, drive for questions, and there's a bias for managers to ask questions rather than give answers. Or
Yeah.
instructions, right?
But I get, we're only a small company, but we sit in the building of the East London Mental Health Trust of the NHS. And I was intrigued to find, I don't know if it's symbiosis or what, that they've got a whole project on how to find joy in your work. I'm meeting the guy next week about it. And
maybe it seeps through the
I think
walls.
it seeps through somewhere, one way or the other. And, so they're nurses, they're carers, they're professionals. They're working out how do we get joy in our work? And that trust is it's outstanding. It's one of the best performing trusts in the country. It's one of the few solvent trusts in the country. And whether, I don't care whether actually the performance came first or the joy came first, because that's the attitude of a top performing trust. We need to get our people to find joy in their work. And imagine if you go to hospital and you find that kind of atmosphere, there is research on this. Right? There's research by the King's Fund that looked at engaged hospitals and how many people die. Right? They first found that if the staff are engaged, the patients are happier. That makes sense, right? But they also found that in the highly engaged hospitals, 96 people die for every 103 that die in disengaged hospitals. That is 5,000 deaths a year that are a result of poor culture.
Yeah.
So happy workplaces save lives.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. And then if you extend that to society in general, which is a very broader topic. But
Imagine a society where the happy workplace is the norm rather than the exception. Imagine the majority of people went to work. My kids have started working and their friends have started working, and I don't get them coming back feeling joyful. I don't get them saying, I have a marvellous manager. One of them, was having a great time. He was in a toy store his job was throwing boomerangs. And he was fine until the day he met his manager, about 2 months in. And after that, he just couldn't wait to leave. And that is all too typical. Yeah.
But I see, this has me think about starts at the top, because you can imagine that manager.
Yeah, well, he's under pressure from his manager and there's been, yeah. I don't blame that. I believe the best of that manager. But because of what he's been through and what he's experiencing, that's what he expects.
So why it's so important it starts at the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, well, I suppose Brian Robertson talks about this as well, back to the holacracy example. He's like, it has to start at the top.
Yeah, I mean, we do go in at different levels. Like in the GCHQ example, it started kind of in the middle and it's expanded now to several hundred, a department's covering several hundred people. So it can be done. Don't give up if you're not at the top. You can do, I have one colleague who, in a major facilities company, who went to his finance director and say, hey, I've got this happy plan to make this a happy workplace. And the finance director looked at him like he was mad and said, I'm not interested in a happy plan. I want you to deliver A, B, and C. And so my colleague said, oh, okay. So if I deliver A, B, and C, you don't mind how I do it? He said, no, if you deliver A, B, and C, that's fine. So he went away and did his happy plan, delivered A, B, and C, because actually senior management is more concerned with results than with how you do it. So you as a manager, or even as a member of the department, can start influencing things. But I like it best when the CEO comes and says, I want to change our culture, because then you know that it's easier. It's much easier.
Yeah, because I suppose the example of that individual who went to his finance boss and the finance boss and challenged the finance boss and found a way to do it anyway, required a sort of a special character in a sense, right? That individual needed something special to.
It's like one of my other colleagues basically says, directors like cake. Give them cake and they're happy. And cake is the results that they want. Yeah. But it's up to, but they don't particularly care how you create the cake. Just give them cake.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that in my own consulting experience. It's slightly different context, but when with agile working and butting up against finance people, right? We make enemies of the finance people.
And of course, agile is spread like wildfire because it works.
Yeah.
Because it produces better results.
Right, exactly. And my conversation with her was like, she wanted all these detailed plans and this and this and this. And I was like, well, what ultimately do you want from a cash flow position? And, and she was like, okay, I want this, this and this. Okay, well, if I just put into your spreadsheet when we're going to hit these things, we could do the rest of it how we want. And eventually she was like, yeah, okay, you can do it how you want as long as we hit these key numbers.
Exactly.
Right.
So focus on what they want. Work out what they want, because they're not always, may not be obvious. Work out what they want and deliver it.
And think the best of them.
Yeah, think the best of them. They're trying to do their best.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what are we going to boil this down to? I'm trying to
okay, I've got three. I've got three key things, if you like.
Yeah.
I could bring down to. I've got 10 principles there, but let's say three key things. So did I interrupt you there?
No. You go for it.
Okay. Number one, get people to do what they're best at. As I say, really radical idea. Number two, give them the freedom to do it well. Yeah, if somebody's not good at something, maybe it's not a good idea to give them lots of freedom, but make sure they're doing something they're good at, give them the freedom, and then the role of the manager, coach them to be their best. Put that in place and you'll have a great workplace.
Right.
But if you came up with other things...
Well, the other one that came through is, I just wonder how important this is the transparency point. And this comes back to David Marquette. And you talk about, you make your salaries here?
Transparent.
Yeah. Completely transparent. And David Marquette talks about this idea that you've got to give people the freedom to lead and be autonomous, but they need to know the contents context they're operating with. And so I suppose there's transparent about the operating contents and transparent about salaries is another. So this transparency point is another.
Let me give you an example of that. So we're a training business. So our trainers, the key metric in our training is trainer utilization. That determines the financial results. And our trainers don't tend to be focused on that because they're focused on this particular course and giving their client a great time, right? But for this business to work, the utilization has to work, right? So we had a point where we had a manager who used to produce reports and give them to trainers and tell them, you weren't doing well enough or whatever, So my approach was to ask the trainers every month to produce their trainer utilization figure. Yeah, and put it in a spreadsheet which everybody sees everybody else's. Okay, that's all I did. I didn't tell them off. I didn't encourage them. I didn't set targets. But what happened was over a year, lower is better in trainer utilization because it's the percentage of the cost of the course. Went down from 42% to 29%. That's equivalent to an extra 5% of turnover being profit. Okay. And that was from me not intervening, just asking them to be aware of a particular, to calculate a particular target. So yeah, one of my roles is to see the big picture and to spot what are the key things people need to be track of.
Right. What do we need to be transparent about?
What we need to be transparent about. So, as I say, there's no particular interest in trainers being focused on that thing. So it needs to be put to them. This is something you need to be focused on. Yeah. So at the same time as focusing on customer delight, which is natural for all of them, they've also got an eye on their utilization.
Okay.
And they see everybody else's.
Because it's almost, that feels like a counterbalancing force against the freedom point. So you give people freedom, but then you got to find a way to judge the impact of that freedom.
Yeah, because what we don't do is give people complete freedom. You ask people what they want. Virtually nobody wants that. People say, give me a framework, give me the guidelines, and give me freedom within it. So one of the examples in there is our website, where we have a concept of pre-approval, whereby instead of somebody doing something and bringing it back for approval, we miss out that last step. Yeah, again, you don't need that meeting. You instead approve the solution before they've thought it up. But for that to work, they've got to have guidelines. They've got to know what they're working within. So on the website, we did a branding exercise so look and feel was clear. We agreed the metrics. It would be judged on how many people visited and how much income we generated.
But not targets, just that's what you would track.
Yeah, we didn't have a set of target. We agreed what the metrics would be. Absolutely. And Johnny went on the best search engine optimization we could find, training we could find, so that he had the skills. And we also insisted to be talking to the users. We didn't need to know they were saying, but we needed that dialogue to be happening. I saw that website the night before it launched for the first time. It either went up or it didn't. And it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what I'd have created. But that's the key point. If you truly delegate, you don't get what you'd have created. That isn't the point. You get what they create. I didn't really know why some of it was like it was, but it was within the guidelines, so up it went. And when we got the metrics...
But that's an important point there for you as an individual, isn't it? You've had to do something there to make this whole culture work, and that is to accept, some of this I don't like, but I'm not going to...
Absolutely.
I'm not going to step in.
Yeah, it's not... Yeah, if it's everything's in my image, then it's just a bunch of clones of me.
And I think that's a really important point, which is, I think, is perhaps one of the reasons, many reasons, why the type of culture you describe here isn't common in a business world. And part of it is the individual leader being able to sort of manage themselves in a particular way.
Yeah, I have to see things that I'm not particularly sure I would do and ignore them. There is a limit, of course. There's a point at which, if they weren't believing the best, they weren't delighting the customer, if they weren't celebrating mistakes, there's a point at which I would say, hang on, you're not playing with the values. But if it's, pink rather than green or, whatever it is, or they've got this on the website instead of that. So when we got the metrics to that website, visitors had trebled and income had doubled, even without the benefit of my expertise. And that's what you get. And again, we didn't need targets, If you just get people to measure, there's only one way they want it to go. Utilisation, they're not going to try and put it up. It's going to, okay, where can we get to?
Yeah. Yeah. And how does the public salaries play into that? What is that important as part of this picture?
I think so. And you regularly ask people whether they like the salaries being public, and it ranges between 80 and 90% do. What it means is that what people earn, what you could potentially earn. There's 3 reasons for every salary increase in the spreadsheet. So why people have got increases. It's not because he went down the pub with Tom, and it's because of this, this and this. And it's just open and transparent. Why wouldn't you want people to know?
Mm.
The only thing which isn't open and transparent is if we ever have any disciplinary type stuff or stuff like that. That's the only bit of the whole file,
shebang,
whole network that is password protected. Yeah, anything else is open.
Right.
Right down to the people who contact me to try and buy the company. Everybody knows about that too.
Do you fear people buying the company? What they might do to it?
Yes, which is why I haven't sold it. At the moment, I got challenged by a director, John Lewis. Why don't you hand it over to the employees? So we're exploring that as the way forward. Because yes, I do fear what would happen if somebody else took it over.
Yeah. But is there the question in my mind though, is there something critical to you being this leader who doesn't succumb to temptations in some way, the way that other leaders might, like to step in, for example, with the website or whatever other example it might be? I just wonder if there's something unique about you and other leaders that have mastered yourself in some way that holds this whole culture together. And if you gave it up to the employees, it might last for a while, but then corrupted leaders would emerge and ultimately entropy would set in. And I wonder almost if a more natural state for human beings is more political, ego-led cultures.
Well, that's an interesting question. We will see at some point. Obviously, at some point I'll hand it over. We will see what does happen. I suppose there aren't many. I mean, a lot of these companies that are freedom-based, yes, they get taken over and ruined.
Right. It's almost like, does it require the philosopher king in the top spot for the whole thing to work?
Well, I think one of the things the corporate rebels say about, they've visited all of these self-managed organisations where the leader, lets people run them, but it says every single one has a charismatic individual who set it up and is nominally in charge. So there is that interesting contradiction. Does it require that for it to work? It may do.
It may do, won't it?
Yeah. But the other thing I'd say is this isn't natural to me. I'm a natural, I person who thinks I know best. I'd like to get involved in this. You know, I've had to, over several decades now, step back. It isn't natural at all.
That's what I mean. I just wonder a more natural state for humans and I hate to say this, but a more natural state.
I wouldn't say a more natural state for humans. I'm possibly a more natural state in our society, where we, know, where the hero leader is, the big thing.
Yeah, yeah. In Western culture, if you like, or yeah. And it becomes then a challenge to think about for coaches and consultants or whoever else who might want to come in and help conversation or help organisations or managers listening to this, that they're only ever going to get so far in the absence of that special leader.
Well, that
holding the line for the organisation.
Yeah, but as I say, I come back to various of our colleagues and clients who've managed to do stuff even without that leader.
So you can get a certain way down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I did many years ago. I was speaking at a conference of a charity organisation, and I gave this talk on this philosophy, and we had some training booked in with them, and the chief executive came to me afterwards and said, "We're cancelling the training. I decide what happens here, and we're not having any of this nonsense." But that was 20 years ago, and that's the last time I've had that view put to me. No, since then.
So something's shifting, you think?
I think something's shifting, though I have to say that we never get the crappy organisations coming to us. Right? The people who come to us are genuinely the people on the road. I recently went to give a talk at a charity. I'd invited the chief exec, and as I got there, there were 12 Great Workplace Awards stacked along the windowsill. But rather than thinking they don't need me, which I would have thought many years ago, I thought, great, these are people who get it and will really will listen and be eager and put this stuff into practice. Because some organisations just get it and are flexible and can change and think that's a great idea, and others are waiting to organise another meeting to discuss whether to do something.
Right. Yeah.
Get rid of those meetings. Think about if you're listening to this, think about every meeting you're involved in. Do you actually need it? Is it actually bringing benefit to you and the organisation?
Is it bringing you joy?
Is it bringing you joy? Absolutely. Yeah. Stop going to meetings that don't bring you joy. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Stop doing anything that doesn't give you joy. Yeah.
Like one of the things we're doing is looking at how to make more meetings more fun. So I went out there to look at who knows anything about this. So I don't know if you know liberating structures.
Yeah, I've had it referenced by another guest actually.
So we found liberating structure, which is 32 new ways of running meetings. Like yesterday, I did a whole morning of the training day purely based on these techniques, and we had a conference which sold out on it. I think it's a thing whose time has come. How to actually organise better events and meetings.
Yeah. Right. Minimise them, and then the ones you do have, make them fun.
Make them fun, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meetings that create ideas, meetings that come up with new things, can be really useful. It's a dull decision-making meetings which we need to get. Dull, regular decision-making meetings.
And actually, as you say, it's not the meeting so much, it's a symptom of the need to be involved in the decision in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah. The lack of trust, the lack of letting go. Yeah. Good. This is the Being Human podcast. The question I ask most of my guests is, for you, Henry, what does it mean to be human?
It means all of this stuff. It's about believing the best of people. It's about relationships with people. It's about not being on your high horse. It's about I was about to say doing to others as you'd like to be done to, but actually that's not a good basis for management. Good basis for management is doing to others as they would like to be done to. But yeah, that's creating fun and joy. That's being human.
Wonderful. Anything else you'd like to add before we close out?
Oh, lots, I'm sure, but no, I'm happy to close there.
Brilliant. Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.